Thanks. Thanks for the great, prelude to my presentation. Glad to be over here today, and thanks for the introduction, RP. Right. So I'm going to take a little time to just talk about, going back to the fundamentals. All marketing has always been about catering your messaging and defining your narrative to the consumer insights that are present at that time. So let's start there. Let's start with the customer, and let's try to understand saying what are the kind of customer realities that we are expecting post lockdown. We have had several instances, and indeed Ashish's prelude to the economic situation is something to draw from even from the past. So 2008 crisis, or even before that, the decade before that. Every decade has had an economic crisis, and there is a lot that we can learn from any kind of economic crisis in terms of how customers will behave. Right. So therefore, let me just summarize saying what are the five new customer realities that I am expecting to see in customers once we are out of this entire lockdown. And indeed, anticipating these changes in customer behavior is the one that will drive a lot of marketing thought and accelerate decision making. Because honestly, I think the entire concept of 8-quarter plans that I used to work with in Unilever, or indeed 3-year and 5-year projections that I was working with in Big Basket and now indeed in MedLife are all out of the window. And the thought and the thinking has to be more about what am I going to do this month? What am I going to do next week? Right? That's the kind of change that we are really scripting right now, because the syllabus is not there yet in terms of the entire COVID and post-COVID world. So quickly moving on, what are the customer realities that I'm expecting? First, I think there is definitely going to be lower spending and a shift to more savings attitude from customers, which means that there is going to be heightened price sensitivity. We already know that there is almost a 40 to 50% cut in discretionary spending by customers. What this means is that people are going to, there is going to be a drastic increase in deal seeking. Discounting brands and value brands are going to go up in terms of their share. And customers will obviously trade down. So the opposite of premiumization is going to happen pretty soon, or is already happening in the market, right? And therefore, keep this in mind when you are formulating your marketing and your marketing plans and what you're going to tell people. Next, I think there is already evident large shift to online shopping, and this is across goods and services. So expect online shopping and e-commerce to really explode and become stronger as the time passes. And if you are in a business which is yet to make its presence felt online, then one of the metrics that you're chasing is really what percentage of your sales have you managed to move online now as compared to before. So even if it is a 0 to 1 kind of a shift, 0 to 1% kind of a shift, that's a big movement for you, and you need to start focusing on that. Third, I think there is going to be much higher digital engagement. So far more digital touch points in the customer journey, not just for online brands, but for offline brands as well. So what are you doing in this situation to basically be relevant? There are new customer segments that are going to open up due to this entire COVID situation. The older generations that have typically been much slower to adopt technology will possibly be having their first take over here in terms of going much more digital. Are you prepared for tackling and taking into account these newer segments that are coming onto the digital world, right? Next, I think HQ is hygiene quotient. So like how you have EQ and IQ and all those Qs, I think HQ is going to be a new buzzword. Hygiene quotient, there is a new filter that no brand can escape. And you'll have to pay attention and will have to prove your credentials as far as HQ goes in the post-COVID world. Every manufacturer, every product, people are concerned about safety and well-being. And I think this is going to pretty much be there for a long time to come. In fact, there are some things that I think are going to become very common. Maybe masks, and wearing masks is going to become the new dress code. And there are going to be so many such similar things that are going to permanently change in the post-COVID world. And lastly, I think more home time. This is an important customer behavior and a consumer insight to really understand and get on top of. More work from home has obviously been instrumental in making a lot of these new customer insights become new realities. And more home time would mean that you have to understand the kind of categories that are going to explode. So, for example, a study from McKinsey has just pointed out that in the US, the kind of the categories that have exploded exponentially post lockdown have been one. You see a massive increase in bread making equipment, so ovens, right? Because a lot of people are cooking in. So cooking in would mean a lot of kitchen appliances exploding. There has been almost a 600% increase in kitchen appliances. There is a 300% increase plus on home weight training equipment. There is a big, more than a 100% increase in craft kits that you can do at home. There is almost a 200% increase in sale of computers and computer accessories, because working from home or being at home would mean that you need all of these equipment. So what does work for home mean for you? What is it from a product portfolio perspective is something that you have to very quickly understand and also start preparing for if your company is indeed in one of these segments that is able to capitalize on this, right? um, but then if these are the 5 customer insights, I want to move to what do you do as a marketer, right? Of course, you play around customer insights, but what are the guiding principles that you can use at this time as a marketer to make use of the changing behaviors that you see around you? Being very philosophical, just follow your dharma. I think it is important, and Tony talked about it. Be relevant to your customers with deep, deep empathy. Trust is not easily earned, but it can be easily lost. You need a lot of empathy at this time. Customer empathy is going to pretty much, help you stay both relevant as well as engaged with your customers at this time. Some great examples from Tony already. Back home in India, I love the example of Surf Excel, which is a brand that I have worked on and very dear to my heart. So be it their campaign on television in India, which is really talking about saying how getting dirty is important even at home. Dirt is good, right? And therefore also talking about and they have transformed their website uh, to come up with a lot of ideas that children can use and engage and learn in the process, which is so central to the brand, which is dirt is good, right? So, be relevant and yet have deep empathy with what customers are going through right now. And you are sure to make a very, very strong connection with your customer set. Second, I think plan ahead by anticipating behavior changes for your category and accelerate the decision making now. The now is the important part, which is why I've capitalized it. You can't be thinking that I'm going to do this after a quarter. You can't be thinking about what am I going to do once lockdown ends. I think it is very critical that you shift gears and say that now is the time to basically be relevant and not think of making zero changes to whatever you're doing in your business at the moment, right? So increased decision, or acceleration in decision making and increased activity now rather than later is important. While you will not be spending a lot of marketing dollars at this time, because cash conservation is indeed important, like Ashish pointed, but you can do a lot even at this moment with the increased digital touch points that you're seeing with customers, and organically in low cost achieve a lot of engagement with your audiences even now. Have a complete view on your future. I think this is a time to also cast your bets out. You have to very quickly, given the customer insights I spoke about, make the right portfolio choices that you're going to market, right? You have to redefine what is going to be your value proposition. How are you going to price yourself in this market? Are you looking at maximizing margin? Are you looking at maximizing sales? Right? You have to very quickly also estimate for your organization and your products, what is the supply chain looking like? Because the future of global supply chains, I don't know honestly what it is going to look like post COVID, right? Ports are shut, a lot of cargo movement is severely impacted. I expect governments to take strong, bold steps in terms of encouraging domestic production for domestic consumption. So the whole global supply chain, and China being a hotbed and a center of a lot of global supply chains, is something that I am not very certain about. It seems quite volatile, and therefore what does supply chain look like for your business, for your products, is going to be very critical to understand and make choices on the basis of. Fourth, channel choices. I already talked about online becoming a mainstay and online shopping going through a huge jump and a hockey stick kind of a growth curve. Make your channel choices wisely. Which are going to be the channels that are really going to do well for you? Possibly these small neighborhood stores are again going to witness a big growth because of proximity, as well as the online bits. What are going to be your channel choices, and how are your channels going to pan out is going to be another important input into how you play for the future in the post-COVID world. And of course, talent and productivity. I think productivity has new definitions now, right? It is not whatever capabilities that your team had were absolutely relevant for the past, where the world was not a COVID infected world. But what is talent going to mean in the post COVID world? Are you digitally stocked up in terms of your talent and resource pool? What is going to be your definition of the new productivity levels that you expect from teams is also something that you need to very quickly chart out for your organization, and that is going to be important in terms of scripting the next course of marketing that you have. And lastly, I think it is very critical to talk about brand repurposing. I think customers across all economic depressions that we've seen in the past have expected organizations to put emphasis on social responsibility and also prioritize, the CSR bit over shareholders' value, right? And it is going to be no different at this time. Customers are watching you. They are absolutely going to be, judging you basis the actions that you take, whether you are, whether you're focused on them or whether you're focused on really increasing shareholder value. So you have to be very, very careful in striking the right tone. While business continuity is critical, and business continuity is what will ensure that there are no other important or other terrible outcomes for your own set of people, customers are also evaluating you and judging you for every action and decision that you take. So be careful in terms of how you do. And repurposing brands, to have that entire tonality of social responsibility is going to be pretty important and critical. Also, repurposing brands to talk about hygiene and safety as a key element of communication and integrating it into your brand narrative is going to be equally important to improve consideration for your brand in the customer minds, right? So uh, please be careful in terms of how you basically do your entire brand speak and brand talk at this time. Talking about hygiene and safety is a definite win, but anything that goes against the overall sentiment of social responsibility will possibly hurt you a lot in both the near and the long term, right? Moving on, I think obviously everybody is going to talk, right? You have thousands of brands. You have about 1 million brands in India that advertise digitally. You have 12,000 brands that advertise on television, and then you have more than 100,000 odd brands that advertise on print. So once lockdown is over and everybody is going to start talking, how will you break through the clutter? Right? And it is something that has been a hot topic of debate forever. But here are 3 things that I think can help every business. One, I think rather than thinking of breaking clutter for all, can you think of breaking clutter for your micro segments? Can you segment your audiences into smaller groups and say, what is going to break clutters? For example, I had marketing for MedLife. I am looking at clutters which are my patients who are diabetics, my patients who are cardiac patients, my patients who have gastro issues, and my patients who have arthritis. So I'm breaking them down into patient groups and looking at how can I create content for each of these subgroups, which is truly clutter breaking, rather than creating one large piece of content and targeting everybody with it. The increased shift to digital would mean that you are increasingly able to create more segments and then think of how to create content that is truly clutter breaking for each of these smaller segments, rather than something which is clutter breaking for everyone. Obviously, it means a lot more content generation, a lot more pressure on creating content and diversified content. But this could pretty much hold the key to clutter breaking content for each of your clusters, rather than having or pegging your bets on one piece of content that will work for all. Second, obviously, breaking through the clutter means having a lot of emphasis on your packaging. So packaging from a CPG world of Unilever was extremely important in breaking clutter in the shop, where customers came and bought products. Similarly, even on content, packaging matters. It has to be appealing, and content is obviously king. The copy is going to be the king. So make yourself as distinctive as possible to break through the clutter over here. And lastly, I think one of the things that is ignored, and or rather is not done as well, is really distribution. You create beautiful content, but for what? To just be wasted because you haven't distributed it properly. So please pay attention to distributing your content properly. Make sure you are there in as many places as possible to be able to reach as many people as possible. And that's how you're able to actually break through clutter. Obviously, a great piece of content only reaching 100 people could get you possibly 100 shares, but the same thing reaching 1,000 people will get you that much more. So pay close attention to distribution of your content as much as the content in itself in order to be able to break the clutter. Right? Lastly, I think this is one of my last slides. What are the kind of strategies and insights that will drive content in the new normal scenario? We already touched upon it a lot in terms of the customer insight as well as what marketers should do. But if I were to summarize and also look at some of the categories that are doing really well, one, a seismic shift to digital life needs to be carefully looked at and carefully integrated into whatever strategies you are creating right now as a marketer. More digital touch points in the customer journey. Second, from the point of view of, and I think Tony had one very beautiful point, which is how can we basically look at positivity and positivity in messages. I would add to it in terms of a customer insight where people are either indulging in happy memories, which is nostalgia, or they are really dreaming of a hopeful future, which is again centered around hope. So both these concepts, nostalgia as well as hope, will connect much better with your audiences as a central theme for your messaging as compared to any other theme that you have. It is a big bang time for learning, right? There are people who are entering the kitchens for the first time in their life because of this work for home and lockdown situation. There are children who are pulled in, and there is a huge impetus on parents to basically engage them and engage them positively. There is a lot of uncertainty in terms of what's going to happen on the workplace, and there is obviously a lot of competition, and you need to stay ahead to be competitive even in workplace. So learning, whether it is hobbies, new skills, whether it is new capabilities, or even indeed it is just upskilling yourself and reskilling yourself, are all things that are going to be very high on agendas. So if your brand can basically be part of the overall learning mindset that is undergoing a massive change, it's going to work a lot in your favor. I already told you about Surf Excel coming up with a lot of things that kids can do at home with and easing the burden on parents during this lockdown. How can you as a brand think of it creatively and take advantage of the learning mindset that's going to be high at this time? And lastly, HQ, just summarizing it, hygiene quotient. No one can escape from this filter in future. Please ensure that your brands are strongly associated as safe and hygienic at this time to be able to capture the consumer hearts and consumer minds at this time. Yeah, that's what I have. Thank you. I hope it was helpful to you.